All right, we have our identification notes on instruments that are used for sterilization as well as scissors. Those instruments will also include equipment that we use for sterilization. We have some different websites and resources for you to look at to help you see more of what those various equipments are used for, as well as how we are actually prepping for surgery. So sterilization techniques is something that we will do for surgery to make sure that we are using sterile instruments. So we've got our setup for our identification notes, ID notes, instrument sterilization, and scissors. On the left-hand side, you're going to put the name of the instrument and or the equipment type. And then we've got characteristics and the use of the instrument and a drawing as well if you're going to find that helpful for you. The scissors is really going to be what you're going to want to draw when we get to that, and you're going to want to draw the different blades of the scissors. All right, so let's go into then our Quizlet set. The first thing that we're going to look at is an autoclave. So an autoclave is the first thing, and it is going to be a large metal square box. Some of them will actually be stainless steel. You'll be able to see the metal. Others are going to have like a plastic coating around it, so it'll look like a plastic box. It may be beige in color, but the inside is going to be all metal. And autoclaves are used for sterilization. We can sterilize things that are solids, you can sterilize liquids, things that are hollow, and any instruments of various sizes and shapes. Pretty much when you're using an autoclave, you just want to make sure that things that you're sterilizing are not touching. This is when you see on the different doctor shows and things, the surgeons have packs that they work with, and so we will pack up instruments and then we put them in the autoclave for sterilization. And you can see the various shelves that are inside of this autoclave. So inside is metal, outside is that plastic. Well, it's still a metal, but it's going to look beige in a different color. They all work differently, but all the same, right? So they might have buttons versus knobs, but they're all doing the same thing. Next, we have autoclave tape indicator. So the autoclave tape indicator is exactly what it sounds like. It is tape that is going to indicate whether or not the autoclave has actually worked. So the tape we use to adhere to the outside of the packs. So we will pack up all of our instruments in drapes or fabric, and so when we fold that fabric in on itself, we want to make sure it doesn't all come apart, so we use the tape to do that. We'll also have different pouches for sterilization, and we'll put the tape on the outside just to make sure that we know that it did work on the outside, that the temperature of the autoclave reached what it was supposed to. So that tape is going to turn black. So this is non-used tape, and then here is the autoclave tape that's been run through the autoclave, and you can see that because of the black stripe. So that's how you know the autoclave has worked, or at least has reached those temperatures to the outside. Next, we have a chemical indicator strip. These we will put inside of the surgical packs, so they will change color when we have sterilization of the inside. So that allows us to know that the process actually went through the pack and was able to sterilize the instruments within it. So we will, it's just a strip of paper, and some of them have a brown square at one end, some will have a line, a strip down the center, so that will turn colors once it's been autoclaved. So again, they are used to distinguish that the items that are inside of the autoclave were actually sterilized. And so this is just an example of some right there. So you see the strip when it's not used, and then when it is used, it turns black. So that lets us see, again, we want to see from the outside that it's been sterilized, but then also we need an indicator on the inside, because you can't tell if something is clean by looking at it. So we need that chemical indicator. Next, we have a cold sterile tray. So we will have something called cold sterile, and cold sterile are instruments that are left in a cold sterile tray. So this tray may be square or rectangular. It may be metal. It can also be, again, like outside plastic, but inside it is going to be that metal, so we can keep that sterilized and it's not porous. So we will put a liquid sterilization or liquid solution to keep the instruments sterile and clean. And so they're instruments that we want to have quick go-to for. So perhaps there's needle holders in there, perhaps there's suture scissors in there. So things that the doctor might need without going into a full-blown surgery. So these are kept in cold sterile. They may be in a long rectangular tray that has a lid, and as you open it, it pulls the instruments outside of the liquid. Otherwise, you are just kind of dipping your hand into the cold sterile to grab whatever instrument you need. So here we have the tray with the instruments. Below you can see that liquid solution that keeps those instruments sterilized without getting damaged. All right, and then next we have our scissors. So those are all of our sterilization instruments and equipment. Now we're going to go into our scissors. So the first we have our suture wire cutting scissors. So these are going to be used for cutting sutures in preparation for their removal. Appearance is going to be straight shanks with angled serrated jaws, blunt or blunt tips. So here we have this scissor, again, is used before we're going to be removing those sutures out. So you can see there's a little hole right up in there once you open those sutures all the way. So here we have, this is just cutting the suture. It's not in the animal yet. We're just using it to cut the suture wire. Next, we have bandage scissors. Most of you have seen bandage scissors before. These we might think of as safety scissors as well. So they are going to have a straight blade scissor with or without presence of a blunt tip on the other end, and this blunt tip then would be able to go underneath clothing or bandages, and they are to remove bandages or other objects that are taped or adherent to the skin surface. And this is gonna, that blunt tip, make sure that you're not damaging the skin or piercing that. So you can see there is a little bit of a blunt tip right down there with the very sharp pointy end of the scissors, so that part would go up and then the blunt part goes down, so you're not hurting any of the skin. Next we have Lister bandage scissors. Lister bandage scissors are angled blades with a handle. The tip of the lower blade features a flattened blunt nub that is used to slide between bandages and skin without cutting any skin. And again, the uses are for sizing dressings, removing circumferential bandages or bandages that are all around a limb. So here we have a nice, that flat tip, but also a rounded blunted end on the top as well, so you don't have to worry about accidentally stabbing as you did with the other scissors. Next we have Lidauer suture removal scissors, or Litrau. Again, ask somebody else how to pronounce that. Ask Google. Do your best to try it. And these are suture removal scissors. So these are going to have a small hook shaped at the very tip of the blade, so that way you can get underneath the sutures and cut those out of your animal. So here we have that little nub right there, that little divot, and that's going to be where your suture goes, and then you just slice from that. So you don't need the full blade to go in there. Next we have our Mayo dissecting scissors. Mayo dissecting scissors are used for cutting the surface tissue of structure. So this I might use if I'm doing a necropsy or if I'm doing a surgery and I want to use scissors to cut open into the flesh. Generally use your scalpels first, but if you needed to or wanted to, you could use scissors. They are available in straight or curved, and then in a variety of lengths, and have a standard beveled blade. So that beveled blade is right there. We have one blade that's more narrow and then a little bit of a thicker blade on the what would be quote unquote the top of the scissors. And here you have a curved blade and then you have the straightened blade right there. You want curved depending on where that tissue is that you need to cut. Next, we have the Balm dissecting scissors. So Balm dissecting scissors are used again for dissecting and cutting tissues. These have a long shank to blade ratio, so the blade may be flat or with a slight lateral curve to it. So we can see how much longer that shank is. That blade is a little bit smaller. Here's curved, here's not. It's thick but not coming to a point end at that base. So those are our sterilization instruments, equipment, and our suture scissors.